to them, because when I said poetry, they're like, and they just really enjoyed it. I could tell they enjoyed it. They were asking me for them. I want that book. I want that book. Can we write some of these down? And I wrote my own. They just constantly were talking about, you know. So I asked a few of them individually about what kind of poetry. Did they like serious poetry or more fun poetry? And so they, of course, most of them said fun poetry. And then we talked about the fact that poetry is kind of like rap, like doing a rap is basically poetry. And so a lot of them were really interested because of that.
That's cool. I like that you get like the multicultural aspect of it. You really connected because, you know, poetry in general is written by a lot of old white men who it's hard to connect experiences with traditional poetry to me. So that's awesome. I really like that. Okay. So there's some questions I want to ask before we do our team beach now. This is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to have a lot of questions to ask you. Okay. And the goal of this is I really want you to think about your thinking process when you're planning and think about the questions you ask yourself when you're planning. What are you looking for? And how are you thinking of lessons? And most importantly, what data are you using to really point out the area of the lesson that you need to focus on? So really, for the observation I did where you introduced the poems, was it successful?
I think so.
Okay, why?
Just because they were all, I had every eyeball looking at me and wanting to learn and answering the questions that I was asking.
I agree. I think they all were asking for more. They didn't want you to stop, and when you did stop, they were very upset. They were very upset about it. Okay. So when you were teaching, was your demeanor and your attitude, was that effective for student learning?
Well, I mean, sure it wasn't all the time, but I think because I was excited about it too, that I think that helped them want to learn it too. I think so. Yeah.
I think so. And I think in general, I think your demeanor, you're very kind and you're very loving and you're strict, but you have that gentle persona with them that they really enjoy. Okay. And this is the one that, let's see, what was it? What choices have you given your students to really engage them in learning? Like, how have you allowed them to not just get the information from you, but want to seek it out on their own?
Well, when it comes to the poetry, I think because they had any poetry book they wanted, they could choose from, so they could find what would match them. But I also gave them the option of even drawing out, like reading a poem and drawing what that poem meant to them, or doing something. Because I have some kids that really have trouble writing. Is that kind of what you're asking? Like,
yeah.
Different things and so they had different choices there, but they also had a choice of writing their own. One, I don't know if you were in here when one girl and her girl she was sitting with did a beat to a poem. So one of them was reading it while the other one did the beat to it, and just kind of gave them some different options to make it what they wanted to do.
That's neat. I like that. And I think incorporating the rap really kind of helps that.
Yeah, something where they could seek it out on their own, like where they want to. I did this morning even one of my boys, they were supposed to be writing. I said, we have 10 minutes, just find a poem from one of these books and copy it down or write your own. And one was like, I don't like any of these poems. It's like, okay, but that's a 0 for today. And so I don't usually have to use that, but I mean, immediately he was like, oh, I better get a poem. And then he got into it. So it's kind of like, sometimes you have to give them that push of, okay, but that's a 0, and then make them turn their brains on when they don't really want to.
Well, and it really, I mean, as far as your classroom management, you don't really forcefully do things. And that's a perfect example of that. You saying, okay, well, it's your choice, but these are the consequences. So I think in general, there's a lot of choice in your classroom from what I've seen. I really like that. Okay. And so when you introduced the poetry unit, there's there's two questions I want to ask. Why did you really choose this particular lesson to cover the objective?
Well, because of what the objective, what the standard said they needed to know the different parts, kind of like a poem, that there's prose and verse and rhyming and all that. That's basically why I chose to do that, and I wanted to put it on an anchor chart and just make sure they got what those different things meant. So it's just basically from the standard.
So from previous conversations with them, would you say that they, did not have a knowledge of those parts of it?
Yeah.
And how?
I mean, I could tell when we first started talking about it, they just thought all poems rhymed. And if it rhymed, it was a poem. If it didn't, it wasn't, kind of thing.
Okay.
So just from us talking about it in the beginning. But the other part, I was pretty sure they hadn't heard those words. I didn't do any kind of pretest or anything. But
Okay.
yeah, it seemed like that, except for rhyming, that the other stuff was pretty new to them.
Well, I mean, data doesn't necessarily have to be like a test. It can be like a conversation.
Yeah.
Which, I see all the time in your class. You're very open with them. They feel very open with you to talk to you and tell you how they're really feeling, even though sometimes they don't. Sometimes you're like, I didn't really want to know that. But they feel safety and they feel trust enough to be able to express it. And that's awesome. That's exactly what you want, because if they express the good things, then they're going to express the bad things too, which is good. And so what new strategies would you try to help a student who's struggling? So let's say, you're in the middle of the lesson, that we do together, and there's a student who is just off the wall answers. And not because of behavior, but because they really don't know what they're talking about. What could you do to help them?
Let's see, if they're really not getting it. I don't know, we could use what we did before with them, find some on YouTube even for them just to listen to on their own, quietly with headphones in. I don't know, that might help them focus. Be one strategy. I don't know, pull in a small group even. We might could pull a couple that really are really not getting it and just deal with them one-on-one or in a small group situation.
Okay.
Or at the end of our lesson or something.
I like that. I think that small group, would be a really good option, because you get, hands-on with less distraction, which some of our friends, bless them, they get distracted, don't they? My case do too. And so in the lesson that you've done, right, which students do you think benefited from it?
As in, like, the level of student, or
just students in particular?
I think they all enjoyed it, benefited from it. I'm hoping that all of them did, but just that they, listened, and it seemed like everybody was listening and responding, since it was just kind of an introductory thing. I would think most all of them, from what I could tell.
I agree too. What do you think we could do with our Teen Teach to help record down this data, that we're thinking? Because all this that we've just discussed right here, this is all data. This is all, part of the reflective process. Because you and I have talked about how you're the only one planning in 4th grade for literacy, and that's hard. It's not easy. I can't imagine. I've never been in that situation, and so I want to help you make it a little bit easier for yourself. And so, what do you think? What kind of assessment could we do beforehand?
Well, I've thought through a little bit of having them, since we've been talking about doing 2 different poems and kind of letting them compare them, letting them answer questions, like have a worksheet or a thing on Google Classroom where they could answer questions about which one they enjoyed more and what were the differences, and just kind of have a worksheet type thing they could do.
I like that, because it gives student voice and it doesn't waste paper.
Yeah.
Okay, so what kind of poems are you thinking? Because you mentioned that.
Well, maybe do one that's not so serious, and one that is serious, and one that shows kind of emotion and how poetry can do that kind of thing, but then also some that are just one that's just fun.
Okay, so when you talk about serious and not so serious, what kind of subject matter are you thinking about? How will that connect to the students?
Well, the one book that I've really liked, that the students have liked, it's about a little African American boy who really connects to a man in his neighborhood, and how that man, because he doesn't have a father, kind of helps him grow up. And so I thought those poems would really speak to our kids. I think a lot of them have been in the same situations that are in that poetry book, so I'd like to pull some of those for sure.
I agree. I think that'd be awesome. I think that's a great use of multicultural resources. I think that's going to connect with them. And so, okay, so you definitely want to bring one of those. What are you thinking for the other one?
Just something, either a silly animal poem, I mean, because they can all respond to those or have something in common with it. Yeah,
Okay.
just some kind of a silly, fun one that rhymes.
Okay. So you sound like you're really excited about this. You sound like you kind of know what you want to do. So, do you want to do this as a team teach, as a demo? Okay. So, since you kind of know what 2 poems really you're thinking about, do you want to do one of them and I'll do the other?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay. And so, how do you want the lesson to go?
Let's see. I guess we could read each of the poems and then maybe even have a Venn diagram or anchor charts where we show the differences
Okay.
in the 2 poems, compare them and contrast them.
Okay.
Even let them vote on it just for something fun and silly, give them something fun to do.
Yeah. Take a vote on me versus you. That'd be funny.
Yeah. You like Miss Harvey better or Miss Silla better?
I'm just kidding.
Trinaya would like you better.
Trinaya, she does love me. Then again, I'd want
her.
visit her.
You can have her.
I love Trinaya. Totally take her in a minute. I love that
I
baby.
need to send her down to you soon.
She's sassy. She reminds me a lot of myself in
So
school.
she never stops talking.
Okay, so I like this. Okay, so the 2 poems that you're interested in, you let me know what they are.
Okay.
Let me know which one you want me to do, and we can go ahead and do compare and contrast, which you mentioned rhyming, so that obviously is going to be an aspect that you want of it, right? And so if you'll send me what you're thinking with the 2 poems, we'll get it done. And so to kind of sum this all up to kind of gather data on what they learn and how they learn, what are you thinking for an assessment? It doesn't have, other than the writing, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a written thing. It could be, conversationally. What will you be looking for?
Okay. Well, I'll do the thing that I was talking about in Google Classroom just for them to be able to respond in writing. But also,